All aboard! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Dolphin fans of all ages, I am Beast Mikey. You've now arrived on my train of thought. As your front row passenger of the To-A Train, I feel like I should probably drop a reaction video to the NFL free agency for the Dolphins and also for the draft and kind of do a couple of mock drafts, one of which with trades, one of which without them. And that'll come after I talk about the free agents. And there's some lower tier and depth piece kind of signings that the Dolphins have made to try to fill out the roster and kind of make things happen, and retentions as well. And the two most notable retentions, I would say, for a lot of people are, of course, Liam Eichenberg and Tyrel Dodson. In the case of Eichenberg, it's a matter of, okay, I guess we're keeping him. I guess he's going to be a depth piece at the left guard spot. There's a reason why I said left guard spot. I'll get to that in a little bit. And hopefully that's all it is. Ideally, he will not be starting because I think we're all terrified of Liam Eichenberg self-destructing or causing chaos in a negative way on this offensive line. And the good one, I think a lot of us would argue, was Tyrel Dodson. And with Dodson coming back and rejoining the linebacker unit and rejoining what turned into a top 10 defense, believe it or not, putting him and Jordan Brooks together with a couple of the other linebackers in question I'm going to get to in a sec. I like what I saw there from Dodson when he came over from Seattle, so I'm very happy that Miami was able to keep him. So yes, there were other smaller retentions, or at least retentions that won't get the headlines like these two, but at the very least, these happened. Also, the restructuring of Bradley Chubb and Teron Armstead's respective contracts. Glad that they were able to make a lot of this happen because of that. And then Austin Jackson eventually, but that was after a lot of these signings went down. So, good look to keep Dodson, Eichenberg, ideally for depth purposes. And now let's get to the people that are new Dolphins and new passengers on To-A Train, if you will. Let's talk about we're going to go position by position, kind of like you would see on most depth charts and things like that. Quarterback Zach Wilson will probably get a lot of the headlines. He'll get a lot of the most notable free agent signing that Miami made. And I think he's QB2, sure. Can he grasp the McDaniel system? I don't know. I don't buy it. Physical talent, he's got it, obviously, but does he have the mental acumen to deal with the McDaniel system in the event that he's needed? And ideally, it's going to be like 2023, at least a better offensive line version, a healthier offensive line version of 2023, ideally with the offense. But at least with Wilson, he's got the arm talent to make throws, but does he have the acumen to make the throws where McDaniel needs and wants them made? We'll see. The big running back signing, obviously, being Alexander Mattison. And short yardage situation, he gets it done. And we did not have one of those. We did not have a short yardage back that can get things done on a consistent basis. Now, maybe part of that's because the offensive line was so shaky at times, especially when run blocking without Austin Jackson, because yikes, that was bad. Mattison at least can get it done when it comes to short yardage. And as long as the line is somewhat fortified, I think we're going to be okay here. So I do like the Alexander Mattison signing to be RB3 for Jalen Wright being the 2, and then obviously Devon Achane being the 1. So that works. My favorite signing is Nick Westbrook-Ikhine coming from the Titans. I love this signing. The fact that we needed a wide receiver 3 badly, one that can go into the seams, one that can block, one that can be a big body for the 50-50 balls necessary. I love this. I think this was a really good look. And Malik Washington still obviously will be valuable, and he'll still be at 3rd or 4th receiver. Westbrook-Ikhine cooked last year with bad QB play surrounding him. I love this signing. Very well done. Ryan Stonehouse to be the new punter and replace Jake Bailey. I like this one too. Stonehouse has shown himself to be a high-tier punter in the NFL. So this, I think, is a very good signing. And naturally, the special teams needed an overhaul because the special teams at the time was a raging dumpster fire. So this works. I think this is going to be a pretty good look. Tight end wise, we'll go to Seattle here as well with Pharaoh Brown. TE2, sure. Can he block better than Julian Hill? Let's hope so. Obviously, Durham Smythe is gone. He was a decent blocking tight end. And there's minimal risk here. There's really not much here in terms of risking. I just need the blocking to be pretty good. And if the blocking can be solid, I think we're in good shape from Pharaoh Brown. Good look there. Speaking of blocking, we really did need some people that can actually block and protect the offensive line at an efficient rate. Well, hopefully James Daniels can help the cause there. I don't think Pittsburgh offensive line was very good at all. I don't think anyone would say that the Steelers offensive line was pretty good, but Daniels was. And Daniels really grades out well with the run blocking, is a decent pass blocker. But considering the Steelers offensive line wasn't very good, and I'd argue Miami's offensive line, if you want both lines healthy, I'd probably take the Dolphins line. Especially with the way Brewer and Austin Jackson played and a healthy Armstead was playing, I will take Miami's O-line over Pittsburgh's if both are healthy. And now you're telling me that Daniels can play the right guard spot, and that's pretty much handled and taken care of. That's 4/5 of your line I feel good about if Armstead is back. So this is pretty good. And Larry Borom coming from the Bears, not a bad depth piece. I feel pretty good about that as long as that's what he is a depth piece. I don't love the thought of him being a starting tackle, but I do like for him to be a backup tackle in the event of things happening with Armstead or Austin Jackson health-wise. That would be at least somewhat decent. And losing Kendall Lamb doesn't help the cause. Losing Lamb to the Eagles earlier tonight does not help matters when it comes to the offensive line depth, but they made the move for Borom beforehand, so I think they probably had a feeling that this was going to go down this way. Okay, I can live with it. I don't know if he'll ever be a starting tackle in Miami. I'd rather he be there for depth pieces again, like him and Patrick Paul being your backup tackles. I can live with that and be perfectly cool. So that's really where I am when it comes to Borom. Time for the defense, and let's first start with the cornerback room and the secondary part of this. Artie Burnt Toast was the name I gave Artie Burns when he was in Pittsburgh. Why? Because it seemed like every time that he was on an island and the opposing receiver ran a go route, it was going to the crib and it was going to be bad for Artie Burnt. And in Seattle, I felt like we saw a little bit less of that, and maybe that's because there were two better corners out in Seattle and a defense that kind of got busy in front of him. So he didn't have to worry about that as badly. I hope that's the case here. I would still love for Miami to get a CB2 or a guy that can potentially take the reins of being the CB1 eventually when Jalen Ramsey gets hurt. Asante Samuel Jr. still out there. That would be a really nice signing. Anyway, Artie Burns, if he's a nickel corner, I will feel better. Especially with him and Kader Kohu on the interiors, I would feel much better about the cornerback room if that were the case. Now to the safety room. And Ifeatu Melifonwu being one of the safeties, and definitely I'd have to think a starting safety going into the 2025 season. Probably could use the help of coaching when it comes to Anthony Weaver. Not that he was bad in Detroit. I don't think that would be quite fair at all. I do think he will be a decent replacement for Javon Holland. Not the high-end talent, but at least stable. And I think we can live with that. And if Ashton Davis, and in the same vein, is stable and not trash, like Jordan Poyer played at points last year, it felt like Poyer was an op, I think we'd be okay there too. So Ashton Davis coming from the Jets, at least he knows the division quite well, and I'd like to think he will be at least a decent second safety or third one if Miami were to draft a safety early, and I wouldn't hate it because this is a pretty good safety draft. I can totally live with Miami drafting a safety even early in rounds 1, 2, or 3. And on the linebacker room, I already talked about Dotson, and it felt like we just traded linebackers from Tampa Bay. Anthony Walker, it's a shame he got hurt for Miami last year, and in his stead, KJ Britt comes over. And I think Britt kind of rounds out the linebacker room, and I'll get to why in a moment. But if you're telling me he's going to be the fourth linebacker, I dig it. I think that's a pretty decent flow for the off-ball linebacker spot, because you got the two Seattle guys and the next guy I'm going to mention in a second in the form of Willie Gay, who two-time Super Bowl champion. We also obviously saw him in New Orleans last year, but he got the 2 rings in Kansas City, the second and third title in the Chiefs dynasty, and played good ball while he was with Spags in Kansas City with the really, really good coaching. I think Willie Gay could be a really sneaky good signing. And to be fair, honestly, I think he could be the third best signing Miami made this offseason, behind Daniels and Westbrook-Ikine. I think he could be the third best signing. I really like how Miami was able to snipe other teams and acquire him. I think that was a really, really good look. So very happy with that signing. So that is free agency, and that's kind of my thoughts on everybody that was signed. I think if you're telling me Willie Gay or Tarbell Dotson are going to be your third middle linebacker, I'm okay with it, especially with a healthy set of edge rushers, especially Phillips and Chubb, who missed most of last year, obviously. With the go with Chop, maybe you get a fourth edge rusher in the draft, or Will Kamara develops into one, or Cam Good. Then I think we're in good shape there. Could use a corner, but there's one obviously glaring need that was not addressed in this offseason, and that's the defensive line and the left guard spot. Those things have to be addressed. How would I address them if I had the power when it comes to the draft? I made 2 of them. One with trades, one without trades. I'm going to talk about the latter right now. So, the draft without the trades was actually fairly straightforward. It worked out relatively well for how I wanted to do business. As you can see here, I let the board fall to me and grab guys I really liked and grab guys I really thought could be somewhat contributing either right away or close to right away. Kelvin Banks screams left guard if Armstead comes back, left tackle if he doesn't for the future. And it feels, could it be like Laramie Tunsil Flow 2.0? I hope so. I think Kelvin Banks could be really, really good. I think he could be really, really special. He fell to me at 13, and that was an easy get. Some of y'all know I would love Tyler Booker, but in this mock draft I did, he was sniped by the Cowboys at 12. So Kelvin Banks became the pick, and it was just an easy, all right, let's just go get him and keep it moving. Walter Nolan was one that I really do like, and there's several defensive tackles I am a fan of when it comes to this draft, and Nolan's one of them. Nolan's one I think could really be a big-time player if the athleticism and raw talent can be worked with and molded. I think that Weaver could absolutely help in the cause in that matter. I would have loved Kenneth Grant, but Grant was sniped, and I think Kenneth Grant is going to be really, really good. Obviously, the dream scenario is Mason Graham falls to 13, and Greer and McDaniel and whoever's in the draft room are running to the phones to get the Michigander. I think that would work out way too well and way too officially, but he was gone early. I think the Jags got him at 5. Either the Jags got him at 5 or the Jets at 7. But the point is, Nolan fell to me at 48, and it was the easy pick. Just go get Nolan and keep it moving. Kobe Bryant from Kansas. Boundary corner. We need one of those. Boundary corner who can kind of sort of be a ball hawk. I would love one of those. And I think Bryant would help the cause being CB2 alongside Ramsey, and is a little bit more physical too. I think that also helps matters here. So Kobe Bryant was the easy pick at 98. And the last couple ones we're going to kind of go through. You can kind of see what I did here. Getting a mix from Malachi Moore, who could be a center fielder, to Norman Lott, who could, another one, defensive tackle, to give Zach Sealer another friend who could be terrorizing and be super talented. That's the idea there with getting Lott. With Kendra, you're getting more depth, and when it comes to the defensive line, the offensive line, I should say, offensive line, and getting more depth there, getting a little bit of versatility as well. I needed to do that. Kaiser getting some leadership from Notre Dame because he was one of their best, their big leaders on that defense. And simply put, I think another linebacker would not hurt, considering those were short-term deals. When it came to linebackers that were signed, I think Kaiser can be a pretty decent player in the right system. And kind of took some flyers on the late round dudes with Coyers. Again, needed some more blocking, decent receiving tight end. And Mafa, more of the bulldozer type of running back. We have Lightning getting some thunder there, and then Gus Hartwig, who I know Purdue was awful, but Hartwig showed himself to be a pretty good player and was flirting with the All-American, the All-Big Ten team in terms of the center position. So that's kind of what I did there, and that was kind of the method to my madness for the non-traded draft. Now, before I reveal the draft with the trades, I'm going to talk about the trades I made. The first one I made is this one here with the Colts. I traded 13 and 98, so rounds 1 and 3. I moved back a spot in round 1, but moved up a bunch and get an extra second round pick. So I wanted to get higher end talent. That's why I did that trade. The next one I made was with the Chargers, trading back 14 again, but also using 253 this time, but getting 22. So I moved back 8 spots, but pick up another second round pick. I wanted, again, high end talent. So that's what 55 was for. Then I traded 22. So I traded 22 with the Rams. That's my third trade down in the first round. And this time I moved back 4 more spots, but pick up a third. So I lost my third round pick with the Colts trade, but gained it back with the Rams and move up 8 spots in said round. Then with 155, I flipped that to the Packers to move back 4 spots and get 237. Remember, I traded 253 in the Charger trade, so I wanted to get back in round 7 just to close the deal when it came to the back end of the draft. So here's where everything shook out. Round 1, after all those trade downs I went to Columbus pretty much for the first part of this draft, and I got me one of the better linemen, Ohio State. Ohio State really had 2 very good linemen, Josh Simmons and Donovan Jackson. Their left tackle, their left guard, and I ended up getting both of them in the first 2 rounds. Now, in the case of Simmons, the injury history is a little concerning. He did miss a good amount of last season due to injury, but he showed himself to be a really good player, and I think had he been healthy, he might have been gone way earlier than what he actually was. He feels like he could be a potential star as a tackle, and I wanted to make sure I got that spot locked up in the event that worst comes to worst. Donovan Jackson, I think he can play left guard immediately, and we can go from there and have Donovan Jackson handle business at the guard spot. Tyleik Williams, a very good defensive tackle for Columbus, who had in Columbus with Ohio State, where the Buckeyes had one of the best defenses in college football last year. So there's a reason why I went to go get the big plug in the middle, who could ideally be the clog that allows Zach Sealer to go to work. And I decided to help the cause for Wheeler and get him some help in a sec. I'll talk about that. I wanted some thunder when it came to the secondary. Xavier Watts brings that thunder. He's a very physical safety, and I felt like I needed to get somebody that can bring the pain for receivers or running backs or tight ends who are trying to come across his path. And Watts showed himself to be a thumper. So at box safety, who can basically be a downhill freight train, I'm here for it. Shamar Turner, another one of those talented players from an underachieving Texas A&M squad, because yikes, they recruited well, NIL bred, and they got nowhere fast because of coaching and various other things. But Turner, to help the situation with Williams and obviously Sealer, in the event that Calais Campbell does not come back, I wanted to get some help and some depth for Zach Sealer. I did think of Jordan Phillips in this spot too. And that was another one I considered. Or there's a D tackle from Florida State that I also considered. But Turner was the one I settled on. Kobe Bryant, I was able to get him a little later in this draft compared to the previous one. I already talked about him, so you already know that. Danny Stutzman, I wanted to go and get me some linebacker depth for similar reasons why Kaiser. Tyler Shue is kind of a flyer pick. Let's see if we can develop him and need him if necessary. That's kind of I constantly said, as some of y'all may remember, I would love a quarterback in this draft or post-draft free agency. And as for the rest of this draft here, in the latter half of round 6 and obviously round 7, wanted to get some more tackle depth pieces, see if London can do that from UConn, a good pass pro type of offensive lineman, can't have too many of those. Conyers helping out the cause, decent receiving tight end, and with some pretty good blocking in there. Johnny Walker, not for the drinking, but for the edge rushing potential that he could have. Could he get a roster spot and help Mo Kamara out, or beat out Mo Kamara, I should say, for that spot? Pretty good year last year in Missouri. And then, as I mentioned with Hartwig, he was a pretty good center on what was an awful team in Purdue. So that's where we are. And that's what I did when it came to the mock drafts. Now, I'm going to do the draft portion of this video over and over again. At least the next few weeks, I'm going to try to drop these mocks every Monday or Tuesday. And same rules will apply. I will go do the one without trades first, and then the mock draft with trades, and explain the trades, because I do like to have more swings at the plate, if you will. As for what's coming next on this channel, NBA Power Rankings. They should be dropping tomorrow, or at the very latest Thursday. There's a lot of movement going on. Not quite at the top, but there's some movement in the middle. And there's some teams that are getting hot and trying to make playoff runs. And some teams that are falling apart and trying to run towards Cooper Flag. Either way, I believe Utah is going to be the first stop of my next train of thought.